So here we are putting this LML back together. Figured I'd give it a little bit of an explanation as we roll through this. The first configuration that we had was wrong. So if you're going to be doing these Chevy Duramaxes, you need quite a bit of space between the back of the engine and your straps. So what you can't have is you can't have straps that are holding the engine at the back and sticking up proud at the back, because they'll hit the firewall. So that was the problem with our rigging the first time, was we went to go put it in and then the strapping was hitting the firewall and we couldn't, we were like 8 inches apart. So we re-rigged it, brought the straps up alongside the turbo and then hooked them to the hook on the crane. We had the crane extended out as far as it would go. And then these are a delicate dance, like the engine mounts and the oil pan just barely clear. There's maybe 1/4 of an inch clearance on each side. And then your starter is a real pain in the butt. There's really no clearance around. You'd have to lift the engine up to get the starter out on the one side. So what we did was we just left the starter in, hooked up, and pushed it off against the inside of the frame rail so it wouldn't get crushed, wouldn't get in our way. And then from there we could lower it a little bit, slide it back, lower it a little bit, because you couldn't just lower it all the way. You'd be sitting on top of the engine mounts, you'd be sitting on top of the oil pan, so you've got to sort of lower it a bit and then slide it, lower it a little bit, slide it. So, and you want the engine to have a cant, you want it to be tilted down towards the transmission. You need it on a downward angle. So there we are, down underground, on the ground, looking. And it's just, at this point, it's just adjust. The two of them actually were coming together fairly well and moving the jacks and what have you around. I'm underneath trying to get the pins to start to line up. And the truck owner here, Steve, is helping. And there you go, it just went together. When I was underneath, the torque converter didn't want to come in together. There was a significant gap, and then Steve went out and gave it a twist like you saw there. And from my perspective underneath, the two just sandwiched together perfectly. The gap closed up very, very quickly. So then at that point, I came out from underneath. We used a jack between the transmission and the engine to lift up to get the two of them aligned properly. Like, as they started to come together, the bottom was just a little bit of a separation, so we just used a jack between the two and just lift up, and then the two of them made it up perfectly 1-to-1, and then we're able to get a couple of the bolts together for bolting the transmission. It actually went in far easier than it came out. We had way more of a fight trying to separate it. This just glided together like butter. We started tearing this apart in October, middle of October. It was after Canadian Thanksgiving. We're in Canada. So then I just sort of took a tour here of our success. All in all, to put the engine in from the time we had it swinging to the time where you see us unhooking the crane was about a half an hour or less, maybe 20-25 minutes, somewhere in that range. I didn't time it, I just threw the GoPro on it, and the original footage here was 17 minutes. This, I'm just seeing that the torque converter bolt is lined up, so we can get the first torque converter in and then rotate around and do the remaining 6. And then we just began the process of finding all of the connectors. This is me. We identify everything just with painter's tape. You see green tape, you know something isn't connected. So here I'm looking in the back and okay, fine. You know, one of the connectors. And we labeled everything that needed to go and stay on the motor. If it had to stay on the motor, it's labeled an M. Motor, and then just sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then if it's staying inside the engine bay, well then we don't label it with an M. That way we don't get numbers crossed. So here I am just hooking things up, and then later on I'll just remove the green tags. So if you don't see any green tags, then nothing's missing, you know, for hookup. But if you see green tag, chances are something still hasn't been hooked up. That's our method anyhow. That and a lot of pictures, but we run the book. We labeled everything into a master book sequentially of what we did, and then what we do is we just work the book backwards. Hey.
Yeah, it's just the.
Even that transmission stuff wasn't as bad as getting it out. Like, we fought more trying to get it apart than we did putting it back in. That went less too.
So, next phase will be putting the clip on. I'll take you along for that.